Any of them really work,
Yeah,
so that's why.
Yeah, if they don't
If
work,
they were throw them away.
throw them away.
Yeah, exactly. I
Who put pens back in the thing that don't work?
All right, I'll look at the
Okay.
first time. This does work
Okay.
if we need.
Okay. Bill, are we on?
We are on.
Okay. Let this meeting come to order. Before getting on to residents' comments, I do want to speak on behalf of myself and the council to commend the village manager for a terrific event that we had last Sunday in commemoration of our anniversary. As you know, next year is our 100th anniversary as a special taxing district, and we are looking for even better and greater things next year.
It's going to be tough to follow, don't you think?
Perhaps we should have a committee, a centennial committee, to look at possible things, hay rides, square dancing, anything you might want to think of. Let us
Also,
know.
you might want to point out that there's some commemorative stuff floating around the office that people might.
You'll notice there are two certificates up here presented to us, one by our Congressman, Chris Van Hollen, and the other by the county executive, Ike Leggett, who were both here on Sunday. And there are various historical memorabilia in posters and so on. I have to say that Gene and Beth and others have been ransacking the Historical Society, and residents, relatives, and those who were involved in the early days. So, to begin with, residents' concerns and issues. Do we have any? I see people in the audience. Anyone want to say something? No? Frank Carell. And use a microphone. We are being recorded. And to get you into the habit, we are very likely to start putting these at some point in the future online on the website. So speak clearly.
All right, is this thing turned on?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Frank Correll, Turner Lane. First of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd very much like to echo your own praise just now of the event on Sunday. I think it was not only beautifully planned, but actually I think it hit the inspirational. And I think that the guests of honor, in particular, Congressman Van Hollen, with whom I had a chance to converse for a while, were very, very much impressed with how things are functioning. My concern or contribution is really only a question, and that is there are an awful lot of things being discussed here tonight. And I noticed that unlike other days, there is no provision for residents' concerns at the end of the meeting. And I'd like to ask whether it wouldn't be possible to include that, because there are a number of things here that once the discussion starts, we as residents can't contribute to.
We could certainly add that to the agenda if there are such issues coming up.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other?
Where's our IT man? IT man. I don't think that's
The speaker is working.
picking up.
I don't know. We can't hear. Is the speaker? Can you hear things from the speaker?
Oh, okay, I'm
It's just
sorry.
facing that.
It's facing that
That's
direction.
fine. It's fine. It's
Okay.
only because we couldn't. I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that
right.
the audience could
Okay.
hear it.
Any other comments from residents? Yes.
I also would like to,
Microphone, please.
I noticed the light was flickering.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
We can hear you, Mom.
Batteries.
Okay. Just shout. Use your accustomed speaking voice.
Molly Rule from Delfield Street, and I also just wanted to add on to your comments and
Richard.
Frank, that Jean did a wonderful job. It was good of you all to have put that on for us, and for Jean to have executed it in such a wonderful way. It was great.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. Other residents' comments? No complaints tonight? Okay, let's move on then. That was quick.
You might want to introduce our officers. Would you be so kind?
Yeah. You might notice that the two patrolmen, the sergeants who police Martin's Addition, are here tonight, and they are willing at an informal time, as they leave perhaps, to talk to you about what's going on in the community. Let me ask you right now, let's just bring that up. We got you before you have to run to your families. How in general are you seeing affairs going on in the community
Why don't you introduce
versus traffic, odd characters, kids running in the street, anything that you want to say? Mike, you want to start off?
Yeah, for those who I have not met, I'm Mike Pratt. I work over here for the county in Bethesda, obviously, as well as for you. I love seeing people, waves, smiles, say hello. When you see me sitting in my cruiser, I'm usually here for you guys. It's rare that, if we're over here on a call or something, that you can't come up to me or you can't approach Nick or I and say hello. One of the concerns or things that I see, and I think Gene might have actually brought it up to you guys at night, is the neighborhoods are very dark. Please keep your lights on, please keep your doors locked, and keep your cars locked. Back in the day, people were like, hey, somebody's going to smash my window. I'm not going to lock my car door. Those are long gone, okay? Just lock your stuff. That's the best thing I can tell you. Everybody here has been wonderful to us. I don't have any complaints about the citizens here in the village. It's a pleasure to come down here and to spend a few hours every week being able to make sure you guys see us and keep you safe. And I know that those of you that have any concerns or complaints, you either come up to me or Nick, or you'll let Jean know, and she'll immediately send them to us. And look forward to continuing that. So please, come up to me whenever you see me, call, whatever you need to do. And I'm sure that's the same for Nick as well.
Okay, Nick, you were here last time, so
Yeah,
anything to add?
No, Mike covered everything. I said everything last week, so I agree.
Okay, thank you. So you know who these guys are. They're usually doing just ordinary patrol. There's not necessarily any bad guys running around that they're after. So say hello to them. We now have something that we've been talking about for the last several meetings, the interpretive policies for two things. What does adjacent mean in the parking regulations? And
Just
what?
one.
Just one.
Oh, just the one.
And
That
may
was
I-
my error.
May I
Oh,
make a
sorry.
suggestion?
Yeah.
It might make sense to have the public comment on the ordinance first, because based on that discussion and action, we may or may not need the policy.
How do you mean?
In other words, the proposed policy on the definition of
Yeah.
adjacent would be necessary if the ordinance to amend Chapter 8 were adopted.
Oh,
If that ordinance is not adopted, we do not need the policy. So the ordinance is on the agenda for action tonight,
okay.
for
I see what
public
you mean.
comment, and then a motion by the council to
But-
adopt.
Okay, so, but your interpretation of the word adjacent would hold whether or not, if and when we adopt the policy, the ordinance later. You had one paragraph interpretation. That's right. So that would still be effective. Are we talking past each other?
Maybe. We only need the policy
Yeah.
elaborating what adjacent means if we adopt the ordinance
Oh.
that's on the agenda.
Oh, right,
tonight.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought,
Because
okay.
it's the ordinance that brings
Right.
in the word adjacent.
Right,
Are we scheduled to adopt the ordinance
Yes.
tonight?
yes. Okay.
So we
I
just
see what you
flip-flop
mean.
those two items.
Okay.
You might want to mention also
Yeah.
that the officers are here specifically to address the concerns.
Yeah, one of the
that have
issues
been
yeah,
raised. That's why
okay,
they're here tonight.
Right.
Yes.
One of the issues that's came up very strongly in the last meeting, and there was an email on that today, is that we are about to adopt, with some exceptions, the county's traffic and parking regulations. The question came up, what does the word adjacent mean with respect to parking? You can park adjacent to your home. It does not mean abutting. You can only park immediately in front of or across the street from. Adjacent, as our attorney has cleverly figured out, means nearby. There was a comment on the emails today. If a person lives on or is on Brookville and Bradley, can they park on Bradley? The answer is yes. That's nearby. They can even park on Raymond Street, which is nearby. So the narrow interpretations that some people were given, we can understand why people might have interpreted it that way, but with somebody with our legal skill and background was able to look through the county code, was able to come up with a broader interpretation of what adjacent means. So you can park nearby. That is the rules, and this is how the police will be interpreting that. Okay? Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you.
When I ask the officers if they want to have anything to add.
Yeah.
Why don't we ask the officers,
Yeah.
what does closer and nearby mean to you, since you're the ones enforcing? Give it a shot.
No, I think like you all said, I mean, I think when close and nearby me, I would say that if you're, I can't give you an exact distance. And I think the reason that there's not a distance articulated in the code is because, next to, like Bill and I were talking about earlier, next to means a lot different here than it would in like the Massacre Poolsville, a lot farther distance. So I think you use the word adjacent because a true distance wouldn't necessarily be fair or accurate. So it's probably the best word that you could use to describe close to. So I would say the same thing. If it's as a practical point of view, I think as long as it's, I think it's an area nearby, and I don't think it's nothing you'd have to worry about. Clearly not if you're parked in front of 123 and your address is 129. That's clearly not what we're talking about.
Okay, so
Are you good with
This is
that?
coming up. I got in contact with the division chief for community prosecution for the county. Steve
Oh.
Chaikin is his name. He's basically in charge of Bethesda, to say the least, so the village here is part of it. There weren't any bright line rules that the county council or a case came up with clear definition for adjacent. They go by maybe what we were going by, just Black's Law Dictionary. Adjacent is defined as lying near or close to, not necessarily touching.
Oh.
And he did note that, first off, the county council was in charge of making all these, so it's their interpretation basically. And he just wanted to make sure we knew the fact that any parking restriction isn't to be overburdensome at all on residents where that falls into. So near, close to.
could you read that definition again? This comes out of the
Yeah.
classic
Yeah,
text.
Black's Law Dictionary, which, isn't the whatever, but
Right.
it's just one of the ones that, it's adjacent is defined as lying near or close to, but not necessarily touching.
Good. Okay, that's exactly what we came up with. Thank you. So that's we're all consistent on that. That's good. So now we move on to the actual consideration.
Public
Yeah.
comments.
Well, yeah. Okay. We're going to be comments on the consideration of the ordinance, which is about to be introduced. Yeah. Yeah. You had a comment back there. Yeah.
I don't know, is this?
Identify your name and address.
Policies here, so is this the right time to comment?
Yeah. For this particular, we are calling for comment at this
Want
particular
me to come
time.
up to a microphone?
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't work.
Don't have one.
So speak up, name and
I'm
street.
Bob Philly. I don't do these very often, but the parking thing did kind of pique our interest, and I think it might be a tip of an iceberg. But I'm just wondering, how do we enforce that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Bob Philly.
F-I-L-E-Y. F-I-L-E-Y, right?
F-I-L-L-E-Y.
Okay, L-L-E-Y.
Yeah, double L's.
Double L.
Yeah, very exciting. So how do you enforce that? Like, is this going to be like color coded or something like that, where it's like,
No.
okay, we're nearby, I'm at 6701, and you're now 4 houses away or something. I mean, I'm just trying to think logistically how that works.
Well, I think, one, it's kind of a matter of common sense. It's like the idea of speeding. The speed limit says, 35, but you're never going to pull over for going 36. It's just the way it is. There's not color coding, and there's not going to be like a distance area. I think kind of common sense plays into it. I mean, if you're nearby, it becomes, and I guess, the intent behind the rule is important to look at. The idea of having this rule is to say, if you have a car parked in front of your house that has DC tags on it, clearly they're not adjacent to their house. If you have somebody the car looks familiar and it's a Silver Spring address, they're not adjacent to the house. If it's the person in front of your house has a Martin's Edition address or the next street over address, and you're on the board like on Quincy Street and it's next town over, you're not. That's probably gonna be close enough. So there's no real bright line rule for that. It's just a matter of like how common sense kind of dictates.
Okay, so it's more of just a call, and someone says, hey, look, I got a guy that's parked out front, he's got a DC plate, This is not adjacent. So it's enforcement based. It's somebody
And,
called.
and time, and also time restraint as well.
Right.
I mean,
Okay, so you wouldn't be
greater than-
driving down the street and saying, that guy lives in
No, absolutely.
601.
There's zero way I could ever.
Right.
I'm telling
And
you,
what we
man,
would do
he is 5 cars away.
We would see it, we would run the tag and see who it belongs to, and then walk up and say, hey, even if it's 6 houses down, I'll go and knock and say, hey, your car is 6 doors down. Can I ask what's going on or what the deal is? And they could say, you know what, yeah, 2 days ago it was snowing or there were cars parked in front of mine. I'll move it. And that's 99% of what it is. It's, Nick and I aren't out here to do exactly what you said. Keep track of what we're doing and chalking tires and saying that. No, this is 99% of the time going to be complaint-based where you have a car, like you said, that belongs over in the town of Chevy Chase that for whatever reason is parked there. And we'll get to the bottom of it. We aren't necessarily going to bust out our ticket books and say, here, 24 hours. We like to dig around and see what it is because, again, usually they're legally allowed to be there. So that's how we would do it.
Got it.
Yep. If I may.
You go ahead.
My take, based on what the officers have said, is if you have a plane to catch and the cab is in front of your house and you can't park, you have to park a block away because your neighbor's having a party, your car will be good. They'll figure it out. You don't have to worry about on your vacation or business trip whether your car a block away is a problem.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Molly, stand up.
Just very briefly, I mean, there's a couple situations where the resident, due to numerous drivers in the household, have numerous vehicles which tend to push, some of us, I can use my own driveway, but it pushes people even around the corner on another street, so. But again, if you run the
Right.
things in the.
Yeah, and coming and knocking on your door and saying, hey, and you say, listen, my neighbor has 4 drivers, that's what we're here for, yep.
Okay, any other comments on this ordinance? Yes, ma'am.
What about the,
I don't, name and
Anita
street.
DeFanis and Bradley Lane, what about the overnight guests or long-term guests with New Jersey license plates or Connecticut? What do you do about those?
I think we would prefer if you guys have driveways to put your long-term guests in the driveway, but the same thing, if there's a plate that's in front of your house that has New Jersey tag and somebody calls and says, hey, it's been in front of my neighbor's house for a while, can you check it out? We'll go, I'll knock at the door. And when you say it's my son who's visiting for 2 weeks, it is what it is. It's, again, like Nick said, it's written there for the problem vehicles where people do not belong in the neighborhood, they don't belong to anybody there, and they're parking there because they know the village is a safe place to park.
Or it could be abandoned vehicle, stolen and
Yeah. Right.
abandoned or
Any of that
abandoned, yeah, something that does occur. Raise it. Can you please stand and,
Yeah, Chris Cole, Shepherd Street. I'm just curious, is this a problem? Or is it just the ordinance is there prophylactically to
Right.
address this situation you just described where somebody has abandoned a vehicle on one of our streets and it's there for weeks at a time? I mean, I assume that's not what these gentlemen really paid to
no,
spend their time on is...
no, it is, I can say, and they can respond, it is not a problem. It became a concern when people started reading the ordinance carefully and said, uh-oh, I'm not going to be able to park. And so that it became a concern. This has not been a problem. I think we have we had any abandoned vehicles that we've had to have towed or anything like that?
I came close to towing one truck, and there's different rules for commercial motor vehicles. Like, I know you guys have trucking businesses at your houses, but commercial motor vehicles are different, and there was a commercial vehicle that was abandoned for like a week and moved the day before it was supposed to get towed. I think, and if you correct me if I'm wrong, the reason this is an issue today or in general isn't so much that we're trying to prevent a problem, it's that the council's trying to make the town code mirror the county code, because the county code already prevents that from happening. There's nothing new as far as where you can park today that the county code lets you do. That makes sense.
Yeah.
They're trying to mirror the two to create lack of confusion.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. I was just going to mention that this isn't a new provision that's being added to the code. This is a provision that will replace a current restriction that is very difficult to enforce because how it's worded. It provides that vehicles can't be parked longer than 72 hours unless they're adjacent to their house.
Or a note
Unless-
from your mother.
Right, yeah. Unless
Essentially.
they're out of the Washington metropolitan area for more than 2 weeks and can't move their car, which would require the village to actually have an inventory of every vehicle in the town and to know when people are going on vacation. So, we're getting rid of that problematic provision and replacing it with a much simpler provision that applies in the county. And the dual benefit is our secondarily employed officers will be in a position to enforce it because it is a county law. In the rare instance, it needs to be enforced.
Okay. Identify yourself.
Steve Schmall, Summit Avenue. I understand that there were several purposes in introducing this change to the village ordinances. One, which clearly I think everybody would support, is to the extent that our village ordinance was inconsistent with state law, it had to change.
County.
No, state.
State
too. State.
Okay, state too.
My understanding is that the second purpose was because, especially since we have county police officers doing whatever enforcing, that we wanted, or the council wanted to have consistency between what we state and what the county officers are used to enforcing. All of this makes sense, but I still have a question. What will remain in the Martin's Edition traffic ordinance that is not part of what the county ordinance is? Is there anything? And if there's nothing, why bother with having any village ordinance at all on the subject?
Ron.
Well, I'm not prepared to answer that question. I can't tell you off the top of my head what's in our code that might not be in the county
Just
code.
an example, perhaps.
Well,
or
give me a minute.
Do you have the
I do. I can compare
marked
them
out?
side by side.
Yeah, well, essentially, we've adopted the county code with exceptions.
What are those exceptions? That's what I want to know.
It's a long list. I saw it in an
Yeah.
email. It's
Section 8-210, 8-303D, 8304D, and it's that sort of thing.
yeah,
Well, I think the question is there anything that the village is doing that the county
Right.
would not be doing? I mean, maybe the simpler answer to that is having your own rules and regulations gives you the benefit of enforcing in the event the county doesn't. And the county doesn't have the manpower to do so.
but we don't have an enforcement mechanism that I'm aware of.
We actually, here's an example. We have the power to designate snow routes in an emergency. Jean can designate certain areas as no parking on a temporary basis, and she can do that in connection with construction projects as well. Obviously, we can't rely on the county to do that. That's a hefty burden.
Do we have an enforcement mechanism for traffic violations?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
impounding in addition to citations.
But we've never done that. We just
No,
haven't.
No.
but we have blocked off streets.
That's a last resort.
Yeah, we have blocked off streets on occasions.
Ron,
Okay. Go ahead.
At one point in time, there was a question, just for clarity, and maybe it would help some of the folks who are here, the list of things that we're doing this because we have to be compliant with the state code. Hey, everybody, here's the list, black and white, no questions, concerns.
Right.
Here's the list of things that we're doing to make us compliant with the county code that are discretionary that the council has. I don't know if that's something that you and Joe Kutra, as you guys were going through this, ever discussed. That may be helpful for some of the questions that are being asked right now.
Sure, yeah. If you look at the proposed ordinance,
Okay.
I mean, there aren't that many edits, frankly. So yeah, on page 3 of the draft, we've listed provisions of the county code.
I don't
What,
have it in front of us.
what section is that? Is there a section
He's
number?
got the-
Oh, you have the other.
We've got the slightly abbreviated.
I
Right.
think that,
Okay.
Well,
You want to try
Okay.
this one and I'll look at
State-
ours?
He's got the
No,
full.
he has the full one.
stated more simply, state law provides that any attempt by a local jurisdiction to do something more lenient than the state in terms of traffic is a nullity. And state mandates that certain traffic rules apply throughout the state. And there's very few of those in the code that we had to correct. I think the only ones are that,
Fire hydrant.
yeah, 15 feet from a fire hydrant, whereas the village code currently provides 10 feet. 20 feet from a crosswalk, whereas the village code currently provides 10 feet. I think those were the only two requirements of state law that we're incorporating, and the rest of the edits, I believe, are to conform provisions to similar county laws. For example, to adopt the county's definition of commercial vehicle, to adopt the county's definition of trailer.
A cart or trailer.
Right. To clarify the off-site parking prohibition by rescinding our 72-hour Washington Metropolitan provision and incorporating the counties. Let me see. To clarify that in addition to not being able to park on a sidewalk, you can't also park over a curb, because Joe Kutro pointed out that if one tire is on the sidewalk, it may not be considered, the car is not entirely on the sidewalk. So there are a couple of clarifying edits like that in the ordinance.
Ron, is this the version that has all the marks that make it what we're currently discussing?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
it? Can I pass this around for folks to look at it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I see it first? But wait,
Yeah.
Ron, I also believe that this has,
Yeah, it's
this one is also, has all, this is, you prepared this. for
right.
me.
Yeah, all the substance
This
is in the
one
newsletter.
has all, and as a matter of fact, there are copies of it over there. It was published in the newsletter. It's been on the website for probably about 3 months. So if people want to help themselves, we can certainly send this around too. But I think this is probably a lot more understandable than this elaborate, with the whereas and the wherefores.
Yeah, at Gene's behest, I prepared a version without all the legal
Right.
mumbo jumbo.
I think that the question arises, though, when folks can't see what striking here means here.
Well,
Do you know what I mean?
well, that draft does show what's deleted and what's added. Is that what you mean?
Context. Larger context.
Yeah, you can pass it around. There was another question? Yes.
Hannah Correll, Turner Lane. Doesn't it all boil down to common sense? I mean, if you have a visitor from New Jersey or wherever, don't you tell your neighbors, hey, I've been having guests. That's our car. And likewise, I take it for granted that nobody calls the police on their neighbor's car, even if it's parked in front of their house.
I wouldn't make that assumption.
Sorry.
There's a lot of other stuff in the county code that I and others have found curious.
No offense to the officer who are here to enforce it.
They did not adopt this, but we'll let that go. Steve?
My first was really in the nature of a question. Now it will be the nature of a comment. I think I'm convinced now, having seen this document, that there clearly is something substantive, although it may not be major stuff, that's part of the Martin's Edition traffic ordinance. Given that, and if the ordinance is going to actually be adopted, I strongly urge that the definition of adjacent be included in that.
It is. It's included as an interpretive paragraph. Is that how it is?
It's separate.
It's yes.
As a part of the ordinance, though,
Well,
not some other document. So that's strange.
on the agenda tonight is an interpretive policy that would clarify what adjacent means as the village interprets it. Why isn't it in the ordinance?
Yes.
I mean, it could be. It could be. However, if it's in the ordinance, it's not going to be binding on a county officer enforcing a county law. The county isn't going to apply with, well, let me finish, please. Let me finish, please. It's not going to be enforceable on the county officer. Why do we do it as a policy instead? Because as the gentleman in the back recognized, most of the enforcement is going to be complaint driven, and it's going to be at the behest of Gene, after receiving a complaint, instructing the officers to take action, and the officers are going to take action consistent with the policy that's been adopted by the village. So that's why it's being suggested as an interpretive policy rather than part of the ordinance. I mean, it could be in either location, but this is a project that frankly was meant as a pretty
Cut and dried sort of thing.
right.
Yeah.
And, we certainly could include it in the ordinance, but that would mean starting from scratch again.
So with that, we will bring this ordinance to the table as what reading is this? Is final reading, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So do we have a motion to bring the what is it? Resolution 1-22-15, an ordinance to amend motor vehicle and traffic laws. Anyone want to so
Can I
move?
ask a procedural
Go ahead.
question?
Yeah.
Where would the policy be? Is it like appended to this section of the code? Where does it go?
Where do you? Yeah,
It'll be on
where do you say it?
the website. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gene. Yeah, it's not
also gets incorporated.
It's not codified. That's the
So
benefit.
you wouldn't find it in the ordinances.
No, you would not. You'd find it on the website.
I
and
also
in
maintain that code book, the code and
the binder
and
of policies.
So it would be there too.
Could we put it in a footnote? It would be an annotation.
Yes, we could add a cross-reference.
If someone happened to
make the reference
go
to
to that they would
Sure.
look,
Yeah.
there'd be little asterisks and they'd go down there, it would be.
Sure.
Can we do that right now?
Yes. Yeah, that's a minor amendment that can be made now without
right.
reintroducing.
Motion,
Good idea.
as I just stated, to create an annotation to be easily found in a footnote adjacent,
Okay.
next to.
Butting at the foot of, but not touching.
So it's a
The
definitional
said traffic
footnote, or it's a footnote that refers to the policy?
Oh, so if you
No,
look,
the
if you look
footnote
at
contains
the
policy.
summary in the newsletter,
Yeah.
beginning on the first page is section 5103. And then if you turn to the next page, you see the provisions of the county code that are incorporated. So we will put an asterisk next to section 3116. Where's that? Here it is. And then at the bottom, under the legislative history parenthetical, we will put another asterisk and the words cross-reference. See interpretive policy number 31915.
Great.
Then we can state it because it's all of 2 sentences, right? I mean,
Ron, do you
We
deem
don't
the
want somebody
interpretive
to
policy to be
figure it
too
out.
much
No,
of
yeah,
a change?
that's fine. Yeah, if you want to reproduce the whole policy.
Yeah, reproduce the whole
That's
policy
fine.
in the footnote. That's good. Good.
That way
Thank you.
it's there, then it'll be in the code, right? Not in the code, it's the
it's an
footnote.
annotation.
An annotation.
Many scholarly
Correct,
documents
yep.
contain.
It's like the Mishnah.
And you can do that.
Okay. So you just moved to do what?
To
Make a footnote.
amend the ordinance
okay,
with
to
the
put
addition
the
of an
policy in the
editorial
footnote.
note
Right.
at the
Okay.
bottom of section 5103.
Okay.
It's not an editorial, it's an interpretive decision by the council.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry?
good.
It's not an editorial note,
It's a-
it's the council's interpretation. I just don't want that word editorial to get dropped in there anyplace.
Well, it's an annotation.
Yeah, it's an
Okay,
annotation.
annotation.
That's a safe, lawyers will recognize that immediately. It's a
Good.
safe haven.
Good. Okay. So do you want to move to adopt this ordinance?
I did.
You did. Okay.
As amended.
As amended. As amended
So a motion is offered.
By Josh.
by Josh.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. We'll bring that to a vote. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Amended.
Okay.
Second by Tiffany. And a vote all aye. All in favor. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank the residents for their comments. Okay, next item, election update. I see we have our election committee chairman here.
Ted Stoddard, Sugar Lane. I'm happy to report that the election process is well
We
underway.
need a motion to adopt the policy.
Oh, yeah, wait.
Oh, wait a minute, Ted.
Hold on one
Hold
second.
on a minute, Ted. What do we need?
We need a motion to adopt the policy. Sorry, Ted.
Oh, Okay, that is a separate motion.
Yeah, and it's in your packet. It's got a policy number on it. It's,
Do we still have to have the policy if it's in the code?
you have to
Yes.
adopt, we have to have record of this being adopted.
Okay.
Okay.
It's interpretive policy 3-19.
Yeah, we need the
Okay.
resolution to adopt
Here
the
we are.
policy. 'Cause the other motion was just to amend the
Okay.
ordinance with an annotation to the policy that has been adopted.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll move to adopt interpretive policy number 3-19-15.
Okay, I will second that. And vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Go, take care of your family.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good
guys.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay. Moving on. Ted?
Okay, I'm sorry, I
Okay.
missed that because I was trying to say goodbye
He
to our
intro-
officers.
okay.
Hold on one second.
Motion-
Josh, you motioned to adopt
I second.
3 dash, what's the number on that?
319-15.
19-15, and Arthur, you seconded?
Seconded and 3-0 vote.
All right,
Three
second, and
ayes.
then I'll vote all in favor, okay.
Thanks
Very
for
good.
driving to.
Okay. Okay, now, election.
Okay. The process has been underway really since nominations were opened on, for 3 vacancies on the council. And we close the nominations is the next step on the 2nd of April. So we have another week or so to receive nominations. We have 4 so far, and those candidates have to respond to us with statements, which they will also defend or present at at the next month's council meeting on April 9th. And
April
no, April
23rd.
23rd, I'm sorry. And following that, we will be processing and making available absentee ballots, and elections itself will be held on Thursday, the 14th of May, beginning at 5 o'clock and ending at 7:30. I think everything is going very smoothly so far.
Ted, could you
Thank you.
clarify how many of the nominations have been accepted?
I have not received any acceptances yet.
So 4 nominations.
Well, I beg your pardon, I've received one.
Okay.
Yeah, he hasn't been, there's one in writing. Okay. And there are 3 others pending.
Good, thank you.
They've been announced to the nominees
That they have been
that they have
nominated.
been nominated, but we haven't got replies from them.
Okay. Good. Any questions or any comments on that? Council? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, tree committee update. Not much here. I have asked for certain clarifications from our building contractor on interpretations of what is required in site plans and other construction documents.
Do you have a document for us to
No,
enter
there's
into
no
the record?
there's nothing more than we have from last time. Pending that, we are still waiting to hear from 1 or 2 other experts on our proposals, and we're waiting until our next meeting. We're trying to round up our experts. So
I'm
there's
sorry,
not much.
I missed the
Okay.
beginning of your notes, and I would want to make sure that minutes reflect them.
Okay.
You had asked the building administrator.
Right. Or to to correct my interpretation of what's required on various building documents like site plans. After looking at county code and county examples and so on, I think I understand what's needed, but I needed an expert's.
Okay, and there's nothing new in writing?
Nothing new in writing, no new drafts,
reports.
nothing
Okay,
else.
yeah, any change in schedule
No,
plan? Nothing?
no.
Okay, well, that was good.
Okay.
Budget's next.
Budget or the personal service contract?
No,
Oh, budget.
budget.
Oh, sorry, budget.
Budget is
You're right,
next.
budget, right, budgets.
Okay, included
ahead.
in your packet?
We have gone over, we've had 2 meetings now, 2 discussions among the council, within the council, on our budget for next year. And there is, here we are. What we are looking forward to in the coming year are revenues. Oops, is this it?
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna, yes.
There's one more page here. Revenues about the same as what we are receiving this year. Should be another page. Okay, here, got it.
This is the first formal presentation, formal discussion and presentation of this at a council meeting, and I think it's important to note that, okay?
Yeah, so we have had a budget committee group get together. We've had a working session with other members of the council, and this is our first opportunity to present the budget to the residents. And I'll just go through and note a few highlights. So there's many items, line items in here. We expect revenues to be roughly the same this coming year, which begins July 1st, as they are for this year. We have been recovering gradually from the very sharp decline in revenues that occurred in 2010 as tax receipts sharply declined from the recession. Since that bottom, we are gradually coming back and up to about where we were before the recession hit. And so, yeah.
Gene, do we have any extra copies of those? I don't have. I got this, but I don't have whatever that.
The budget?
Vertical chart.
Oh, this is the budget? It's not in here? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's in the front of the packet, not
The property tax rate, we are holding stable as
you're proposing, really.
We are proposing, right. This is not.
This is all proposal. Okay.
This is all proposal. We have not passed it.
You got to make sure that the record is.
We are proposing that the property tax rate remain at the same level that it is this year. There is what the county or the state calls it. Is it a state law? The constant yield tax rate. This is state. They do a calculation of what they call the constant yield. Right, tax rate that would produce. They look at how many buildings are what the destruction is, the construction, what's happening to assess values, and they figure in order to maintain your revenues as it was last year, what would you have to do to change that? It's kind of you can do this automatically because it doesn't involve any change in revenues. That would have raised the tax rate. By 0.0001% per dollar of assessed value. We have decided rather than to get that extra $37, we will hold the tax rate where it is. So it's not a big deal one way or the other. In terms of expenditures,
I think there's something else.
What's that?
There's 2 other important things because Ron will need resolutions for these things.
To change.
The one is the proposal to drop the commercial tax rate to the same level as the residential.
Okay.
It's currently at 10 cents.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I have other copies of it. And I'll make sure you get all this. And then also just to note that the utility rate we would hold at $1.45 per $100 of utility assessments.
We have a commercial property tax rate that is different from the residential tax rate, which means that it's a nuisance because we have to. Ordinarily, the county sends out all the bills, does all the collection and all the paperwork, and sends the money to us. If our rates differ, we have to do all that billing and collection. So we are making the commercial tax rate similar to the residential rate. It doesn't add up to a lot of money, and it reduces the burden on our taxing and overhead and that sort of thing. There is a separate rate for utilities, and that's all of the lines that you see, the telephone lines, the cable lines, and so on. That is property in the village, and that is taxed at a separate rate, and that is being maintained at that separate rate. In terms of expenditures, roughly everything, it's kind of boring this year. Almost everything is the same. There is one or two items that are different. One is that because of our police patrol, we have to pay higher insurance rates, and that's included in the budget. Another is that the tree committee that was just mentioned is going to be recommending. It has not been adopted yet, and we haven't even formally proposed it. But to give you a sneak preview here, we will be proposing that the village subsidize the planting of trees on private property.
You're contemplating proposing.
Contemplating proposing.
Right, yeah.
We are contemplating
Let's get
proposing.
these words right here, yeah.
And this is being done for a number of reasons. One is that all of the research and evidence shows that trees on private property enhance the value and the livability and the desirability of the community as a whole. The second is that our tree canopy has been endangered by, largely by new construction projects. And so what we want to do is encourage the planting and maturing of trees to make up for those that are lost. And there was a third reason. The third reason is that it is our finding that a lot of people want to do this, but don't know how to begin. Who do you call? What kind of trees? Who's the nurseries? Who will do it? Can we trust them? Are these good trees? And we've seen from neighboring jurisdictions when the municipality has stepped in to help, there has been a very, very high demand for this kind of service. And so we are suggesting that the village help subsidize this, not pay for everything 100%, but to subsidize the planting of trees. So that's incorporated in the proposed budget. It is the proposed proposal of the tree committee that is now being reflected in the budget. And that's about all. As I say, in years past, there's been a lot of changes that have been going on, but this year was pretty cut through. What's the word? Cut and dried. I can't remember my cliches. It was cut and dried and kind of boring, except for these few issues that have been coming up. So, any comments from the residents on any of this for the council? Council first. Okay.
John Fleming and I had talked about this, and since I wasn't able to attend the budget meeting, just a discussion of, and I'm looking in our accountant's audit. We have this. It appears to be a large undesignated.
That was one other. I'm sorry. One other item. Let me interfere with you there. Interject. We have
the sidewalk.
Well, that's right. Right. That's right. That was what I was going to get to.
If you look at the last page in the report, the numbers have been changed to reflect that as additional program. And then there's some of your final budget numbers. Dan did this. I think it's important that you guys take a look at that, okay? Because that changes what you had been looking at before.
The one other change I've forgotten was that we have this reserve fund for street lighting, which is underway in designing and improving and looking for new street lights. For the roads that have been torn up by all the utility work that's been going on, and for sidewalks. So we had one item, roads and sidewalks, and we decided to split that into two sections, roads one and sidewalks another, because the road project looks like it could be quite large, and have a separate item for the sidewalks, many of which, as you walk around the village, will know will either need to be replaced or upgraded in one way or another that will be discussing. And so what's
So if you go down to
the final
5,800 designated funds on the third page, you'll see it. You added a category 5812 designated street sidewalks.
Sidewalks, right.
We put $250,000 in.
Right.
We're predominantly thinking about having an eye to Brookville Road. So that shifts money around, as you can see by those numbers. And the unassigned fund balance then is reduced.
Right. So we have to give you an idea of the scale of what we're talking about, for the streets we have set aside $500,000, for the lighting $500,000, for sidewalks $250,000. That leaves a little bit over $1 million in our undesignated reserves, which is gives us about 1.5 to 2 years operating budget to operate if disaster strikes and we lose all our money. Okay.
Tiffany, I specifically asked Dan to give me another name, and so he said that the government, the county acceptable practices finds the word unassigned fund balance as the
It's on
acceptable.
page 11 and 12.
Is that the audit?
Exactly.
Audit, yeah, right.
Which is what I had discussed with John. I just,
Well, and Dan has approved it and said if we had issues with and wanted to do anything else that we could take it up with the board, but this is the good term.
I think it's, when it's consistent with the auditor's report, that's good news for everybody.
So if you looked at our financial situation, you'll see we have a lot of money in the bank, but that money is about to be spent for various good purposes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
You did invite comments.
Did I? Yes, I did. Yes, this was to introduce.
I'm still Frank Correll of Turner Lane. I attended your budget session on the 5th of March, and I was not able to take very much information away with me because I did not have access to the budget proposals, and neither have I seen them since. So I'm a little bit like the elephant being touched by the blind man. But I do have a group of questions that I respectfully ask for your answer. Number one, in the current budget, could you clarify how much is contemplated, proposed for spending for these capital projects, and which are they?
Yeah, I just said $500,000 for roads, $500,000 for lights, and $250,000 for sidewalks.
So that's $1,250,000 that is contemplated to be spent in the next fiscal year.
Possibly. The lighting is in process. The roads, we are awaiting word from utilities when they're finished digging. But if possible, we would like to do it, yes.
All three things?
Possibly. We don't know.
And how much does that leave in your surplus?
I said the surplus, the unassigned surplus is a little over $1 million.
All right. So the entire allocated surplus is intended to be spent, and the unallocated surplus amounts to roughly $1 million.
Right.
Right. Do you contemplate assigning some of that unallocated surplus to starting a new reserve fund for these capital activities?
No, the capital activities have already been assigned their funds.
Yes, but how about future capital activities?
At some point, I presume yes, but we don't have any plans right at the moment.
Okay. Secondly, what kind of a presumption are you making with regard to interest earnings?
We do have projections for interest earnings, very small.
Basically nothing.
More than that. More than nothing, but not a lot. In terms of our...
Until it's spent, you've got $2 million sitting around.
Right. At about 0.1% interest for fully federally insured. If you can find us a better place to put it.
Well, we also have that. We have that money.
We have some CDs. And,
we have the money in that congressional.
We have CDs outstanding. But if you can find a good place to put our money that meets the criteria of fully insured, fully federally FDIC insured.
Well, maybe your treasurer can take a look before this budget is finalized, because when we're talking about $2 million, and until it's spent, you're talking about spending $1 million, one would hope that there's a possibility for adding to our income. And are you able to quantify at all when some of this work would begin, like street lighting?
Well, we'll be hearing more on the street lighting later, but quickly, we have had a couple of prototypes from the manufacturer. We've had them up on poles on Bradley Street. Our lighting engineer has evaluated that with his light meter and light distribution, did not like it. Went back to the manufacturer to redesign, and we are in the process right now of about to get a redesign to be delivered
Mid-April.
So we can mount that and see how the new design works. We are also working with Pepco on appropriate rates to charge for the streetlights for both installation and then the maintenance and electricity fees.
Thank you.
So it's been, Gene had said we're about to put them in. I say, I give it a year. When we first got them, when they were sitting up here, we thought we had it.
Oh, yeah.
We were ready to go.
But we were hopeful.
Yeah. One other question, then we move on.
Steve Schmall, Still Summit Avenue. One procedural question. Will there be another opportunity to formally comment on the budget, or is
Yes.
this it?
No, oh no, will be presented at the next meeting too.
Well, you have the two next meetings. The 23rd of April.
Yeah.
You actually have to take some action on this to say that you like this plan, but here tonight, you can take comments. The 23rd, you take comments, and then the budget would be put in the newsletter, and then it gets voted on in May. So there's lots of opportunity now. It'll go in the newsletter, like I say, it'll be up the website, and you want to be soliciting any kind of comments from.
And you will see the numbers and what goes up there.
I might as well at least ask, since you had mentioned specifically about the proposed change in the commercial tax rate, what will that represent in terms of lowered revenues?
Hundreds, not much.
In the hundreds?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, for what?
For the lowered commercial tax rate.
I think it's about $1,600.
$1,600, okay.
I don't have that number in front of me, so you can't hold it to me, but I believe it's about $1,600. One of the things that's important to understand is we pay, as tenants of this building, we pay
a share
of that money. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. No, do we have to take action on this? This is just for presentation tonight, right?
You don't want to take action, just, let's make it clear that
It's just being introduced for public consumption.
Right.
For your consumption,
right?
Because you guys really haven't seen all the papers being put together, and as well as for public consumption. And then we'll start to gather, the forces of interest on it.
One thing I would recommend, didn't get to do it before tonight, I apologize, if possible, depending on what kind of workload it would be, to add maybe actuals from the total year of 14 so that people have a full year to look at, and then they're looking at the partial of 15 and then the proposed for 16.
You can ask your accountant to do that.
Yeah.
If that's something that council feels is
We'll just add another column, the actuals for 14.
If that's,
so that there's a concrete number in here. People can say, okay, we spent this much this year, we're on track.
Well, now, there is the column there's a couple of things here, and in the process of developing this budget, that was a consideration, of course, in developing what the annual budget is here. If you look at the columns, the actuals to date, the annual budget, and then some adjustments that we're assuming we're going to need to make as a consequence of what's been happening this year. So that adjustment column really reflects that. And as we get a little bit further on, and it is still just March, we will make some more adjustments. We're going to have to adjust for snow removal, for example. Okay. But certainly, I don't see why we can't
add another column.
Add another column and see what it looks like. If it's informative and it adds more to the guts here. I think we used to do that.
Right.
So let me just
add another column.
And
he has that.
Yeah. Okay, let me, so add actuals for FY14.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, moving on. There is a subject that has come up among council members and with residents asking about competition and asking why personal services contracts are different from garbage contracts. It is treated differently in the ordinances or in the charter. for contracts greater than $10,000, right? That's correct. We require competitive bids for personal service contracts. In fact, personal service contracts are explicitly excluded.
Want to read the chart?
Yeah, personally are explicitly excluded. You want to could read the chart
Sure.
here?
Maybe Ron.
Right. Our lawyer can.
Yeah, Section 701 of the Charter provides the council shall not contract for material or work other than personal or professional service contracts in a sum exceeding $10,000 without having first invited competitive bids for the same. And
So the question that arises is $10,000 is an amount that the previous councils have defined as appropriate. What makes other kinds of contracts different? Should they be included? We could be paying, I'm trying to think whether we actually do more than $10,000 for personal service contracts, like our legal support, our building contractor support, our accountants. Should they also be required to meet the competitive bid? And why is that different? Well, I've asked Ron to look into this and to give us some kind of background in this. So Ron, could you summarize some of the things that you told us?
You all, by the way, have a copy of Ron's
Oh, do we have it there?
email
Okay.
in with the documentation.
Good, thank you.
Before we go on,
Yeah, go. You have Tiffany.
maybe the definition would help. Personal and professional service contracts, just that everybody's on the same page about what we're actually talking about.
sure, yeah. The question is, what's the difference between a professional contract and a personal contract? Those terms are not defined by the charter. Professional contract, I would give it its ordinary meaning as used in the charter. That's a contract entered into with a professional. Well, what's a professional? Of course, the obvious examples are the professions that require degrees, licenses, extensive training, extensive education, extensive experience. And I gave you a list of what I thought professionals could include that provide services to municipalities. And you start with all the A's: accountants, auditors, attorneys, arborists, and building code administrators, traffic engineers, civil engineers, surveyors, and the like. What does personal mean? Personal contract refers to a situation where you're contracting with a company but designating a certain person to perform the services. Maybe it's a civil engineering firm, for an example, and
Morton Thomas.
right, yeah, and you've heard about from other jurisdictions, this particular engineer does a great job. Well, you specify in the contract that we want this person to provide the services, and if this person is not available because he or she becomes incapacitated, dies, then we have the right to terminate the contract, because we're only entering into this contract because we want that particular person. That's what personal contract means in my opinion. So it's not necessarily professional, but it means that you want a specific individual whose experience has wowed you.
And any contract under $10,000, well, it doesn't matter because they're excluded in their entirety.
Yeah, and so to Arthur's point, why, as a matter of practice, do we distinguish different types of services? Why is there a dollar amount? And I can tell you that municipal charters, most of them, I've got one client that their charter has no procurement provisions, but most charters do have procurement provisions. Most require competition of some sort, so that with the expenditure of public funds, the council is making sure the best deal is being acquired for the residents. But as a matter of public policy, there are certain situations that competitive bidding can be dispensed with. And the common examples are if emergency procurement is necessary, and we've just had a huge snowstorm. We don't have time to go out and bid. We need this snow removed right now. Trees falling in the road, and we need it removed. So emergency, exigent circumstances, that's a typical exception. A second is where the dollar amount is so low, the administrative burden in having to competitively bid would outweigh the public benefit. Some of the contracts that you enter into, the photocopier repair contract, for example, I understand is around $140 a month. So that's a type of service that maybe doesn't make sense to bid out if it's that low. A third example is a sole source contract. When you make a finding as a council that there's only one vendor available that provides this service. So, issuing an invitation for bids or calling up folks and inviting them to submit a bid is going to be futile because there's only one source available. For piggyback contracts, if you're cooperating with another jurisdiction in obtaining services, there's a
Or the state is a good example for us because we can piggyback on state contracts, and we've done that.
Yes, yeah. Presumably in that situation, the other jurisdiction upon which you're piggybacking has already gone through the competitive process, and you're taking advantage of the work that they've already done, the pricing that they've obtained, and there's usually built-in savings by having multiple jurisdictions cooperate. So that's another exception. And the last is a professional, and there's a recognition that with general services like trash removal, for example, that's a type of service that's typically bid on by contractors based on here's my cost, so here's the best deal I can present it to you. Whereas with professionals, typically you're identifying a certain professional that you want, and their rate is what it is. And so you're not. However, let me preface that by saying, just because it's an exception doesn't mean you have to apply the exception. You're not bound to follow these exceptions. You have the discretion, if you want, to require bids for anything, to require periodic reviews of all your service providers. Absolutely, that's an option. There is no state law governing how you undertake the procurement process. It is a matter of local law, local charter and ordinance. The state gives you the authority to spend public funds for public benefit, but leaves it to the municipality to decide what processes apply for that procurement.
Good. Tiffany, any other points you want to raise?
I think it may be good for us to do kind of a working session on what we have and whether or not they're personal or professional, where they fit into what we're currently doing, and then how much we're expending on those things annually. A little bit more research before
To provide oversight.
Yeah. Into what, how much are we spending on Ron Bolt every year?
He's actually cheaper now than he used to be.
Right, I know. I did a budget analysis.
We got a
years on the
deal.
council,
Right.
and I've seen that. But just, again, for the folks who have raised the questions for transparency's sake, what are the contracts that we have? Where do they fit into these categories, and how much are we spending on them? Because, depending on the outcome of that discussion, would it make sense into setting some sort of limit for some of the personal and professional contracts, or are we happy with them and leave them as they are?
Okay. Josh, do you have anything to add on this?
Although I agree, I'm curious about the things that Tiffany's discussing,
Right.
as we discussed in the last meeting.
Yeah, and a year ago this came up as a question, and we had a resident raise it, so I think it's important just for us to follow up on it, follow through.
Good, thank you. This is a good tutorial for us, I think, Ron, to know how we stand legally, historically, and matter of oversight. Good, thank you.
Oh, you know what else that I think I think it's a great idea to do a work session. I've already started to collect a documentation of what the surrounding jurisdictions do. All the other towns that we managers have our listserv and our local managers meetings, and there's a lot of information and a lot of data and a lot of policies that will be.
They do. Well, that would be good.
Many are very, very similar because we're sort of all drafted from the same primordial ooze. But I think that adds there's a lot of knowledge that still needs to be added, and it's easily available. So I've already started to collect that information.
Good.
So
I think we're not open for comments at this point. You'll have a chance at the end of the meeting. But we now have our
Alan Beal,
building administrator's report. There's a lot of construction activity going around in the village, you may have noticed.
Sorry, I meant to give this to you earlier. You might, just on the chance that everybody doesn't know him, this is Alan Beal.
Alan Beal, our building administrator. He's the guy who looks over the permits, the plans, the site plans, blueprints.
You got it.
My contract is significantly less than $10,000.
Ryan, could you kind of turn slightly around so people can hear you? Okay, that's good, thank you.
He is addressing the council.
Ongoing projects, new permit requests, issues. 3507 Raymond Street has a rear addition that's planned. They had some potential plans that would have required a variance. They've opted to adjust the plans so that they won't need a variance. 7315 Delfield has a proposal for a sport court fire pit. I was actually just looking at that. The main thing about it would be front yard non-vegetated coverage issue. They're essentially going to put it in the front yard. But they have such a wide front yard there that they may actually be able to do it. It's at the end of the block.
If I can interject just for a minute, this is for the council's purposes, because this is going to require, I think, potentially council involvement, because it's not specifically code-related. This plan, which you just got today, is proposing that a substantial number of trees be planted in the right-of-way to screen what they're proposing.
I was looking at that, I was like, there's no trees there.
Yeah, I know. And he was talking about moving the town tree, and there's a lot of explanation required that property's not yours, that property is ours. And so it came as a bit of a surprise, but we may very well face a decision in this particular case as to, and I explained, likely if you put trees in our right-of-way, that we're then responsible for caring for them. There's a lot of other complications that will add to it, but just so you know, This is really pretty much the first time where we have faced a situation where somebody's proposing to use our public right-of-way essentially to provide screening at their expense to plant. And then what do? Do you do a license to use the right-of-way and require them to maintain it? I mean, we'll probably have to pull some legal in too. So, but just want to let you know that's a part of this new thing that just came today. I'm sorry, Alan.
That's okay. It's also a really unique lot, so it's not something that, there aren't a lot of other lots that could actually come and make this sort of proposal. It just wouldn't work in a lot of other places.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
3504 Taylor, a dumpster appeared and was removed. 3506 Taylor, there's new drawings that conform to the setback requirements. They're vague at best, so we'll continue to work on that. 3414 Cummings Lane, the Garage Mahal, we're still waiting to hear more about that. The initial plan review that we did essentially was fine from Martin's Additions perspective. Permits that are underway or ready to be issued include 3513 Raymond Street is underway, no real issues. 3521 Raymond Street, exterior roof addition, new front porch, underway. 3509 Shepherd Street is rear addition, should be ready for final clearance shortly. 3510 Bradley is still underway. 3514 Bradley is completed, the bond has been returned. Washington Gaslight Street patch completed. 7309 Delfield continues to be a challenge, making their way. 3219 Thornapple, construction is almost finished. 7218 Chestnut, construction is coming to conclusion. They're awaiting the water line connection. tree fee still needed. 3511 Raymond Street renovations, construction underway, inside work continues. 3529 Raymond Street patio construction continues. On hold is an addition at 3505 Raymond. Plans have been seen, but no real action going on that. 3515 Shepherd is completed. We're waiting to return the bond. 3514 Turner. We need a right-of-way license needed for the fence. 3518 Bradley, the bond is still being held. Possible additional work coming. Projects that are finished: fence at 205 Oxford, fence at 7200 Chestnut. 101 Quincy Street, still no action on an unpermitted driveway. And then
But they
other-
did shovel their sidewalk.
Yes. You saw that email.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then other things that Wayne has been working on include the streetlight review for uncovered streetlights, pothole list.
How are the potholes doing?
They're there. They're there. Yeah, but he is he will be preparing a list for me of potholes, and then we'll have to make a determination about whether we want to do a temporary patch or a permanent patch, depending upon what WSSC is doing with the streets. So, but and also we're supposed to get snow tomorrow, so we can't patch potholes when we got snow. So, but it is on the agenda, so it's good.
Okay.
Gene, maybe this falls into the other municipal or not, or maybe in your report later. Raymond and Bradley, the gas water line ongoing saga. Have we heard anything new on when they?
No, I have not. About whether or not they're going to, when it's going to start, the gas motor line, I have not heard anything yet.
Okay.
Look, I think WSSC is so swamped by the water main breaks that they're not even talking to me about. But Bradley, Raymond, Melville, and Quincy are still slated for that, for the gas, for the water. And then gas is intermingled in there. And what I really want to get them to do is I really want them to change out the sewer lines. Because once you got a trench, we might as well do it all. So it may be ugly, but I have not heard anything from them.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Ellen and Jean, on the Delfield, the 7309 Delfield, the challenges, these, are we past them now, or is all the big equipment in and installations? No.
They continue to seem to block the street constantly, unending, so...
I mean, as far as like big deliveries go...
Yeah, there was some big equipment coming in.
Right.
That's there now?
They've gotten their big deliveries, but they'll get appliances which will come. I mean, any delivery trying to go down that street seems to be an issue.
It's brutal, yeah.
Okay. But there was a big, what do you call that, the air conditioning, the heat exchange unit for the backyard and everything?
I thought they were doing a geothermal system,
that's
and
what I meant.
I have not seen any evidence, nor has Wayne recorded any evidence of them actually putting that geothermal.
Yeah, they dug a bunch of big things in the backyard. Plastic tubes. There's
those are the dry wells.
Dry well.
Yeah, those that handle the stormwater. They were going to actually put a geothermal.
So you told me.
Yeah, but we've not any evidence that it's been done yet. I don't know, maybe they changed the plans.
It's also possible that they didn't do a well geothermal, they did a shallow one.
Okay. I guess we could look at the plan. If they've done it and we have gone without any disruption as a consequence, I'm very happy. Yeah, it's a bonus.
Alan, is it your impression now that we're past a hump in construction activity, or is it still coming on strong?
Not by a long shot.
Really? So it's still strong?
Yeah.
Unabating?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if I could just go back to your tree question, Arthur had emailed me about, and you're right, so when you go to the Department of Permitting Services, site plan guidelines, there is no requirement to locate trees. Now, most of the really good surveyors and the people that prepare the engineered site plans include essentially
That's what we're confused about.
And so
they do it, but it's not required.
There's 2 or 3 that it's just on every plan. Essentially, they go out to a property and they put everything that's on there.
Right.
You know, if there's a tetherball pole, it's on there.
Okay.
Other ones don't.
Okay.
And that's the benefit of when people work with the really good surveyors, we get really good tangible information.
Right.
But there is no requirement that it be there.
Okay, good. Okay, that's interesting, because we were confused because we were going through site plans and some had all the trees and some had none. And,
one of the things I've
we
seen,
weren't
Alan,
sure.
is I thought as a consequence of the tree canopy that they're now providing more even though it doesn't affect us, the tree canopy law, that they're providing more summary data on the reports of how many trees would be able to be located on that property. Now, maybe it would, because it would have to be consistent, but we're not seeing necessarily where the ones that were there were located and removed.
Right.
And then the only other thing to consider just going forward is that anytime you have a requirement that is distinctly different than what the county requires, it just becomes very difficult to get people to conform because we're not on their radar in that regard.
Right.
I mean, it's the same problem we have with some of the zoning issues, which sort of we continue to bump into stuff, but it's sort of come around.
I mean, where our Martin's additional requirements are different from the county's zoning. Okay.
So unless there's some teeth to requiring people to have trees located on there, if it's just because you want to know, it may be difficult to compel people to provide that information.
Right. Okay. Good. Thank you. That's very useful. Good. Any other? Okay. Let's move on. Financial matters. John is not here today. I've looked at our latest financial data provided by Dan Baden, and I would say we're in good shape. Revenues are coming in a little higher than we expected. Expenditures is hard to say because people don't send their bills in on time.
I think that's what should be added to the contract discussion.
Right.
Timeliness.
But it looks good. It looks good. And the reserves are sitting there, and we're not getting as much interest payments, receipts as we would like to.
I thought, I don't know if you want to do it this way, but I think that there's no reason why you can't go on and act on Dan Baden's reports and just make a motion to approve his reports.
Yes, okay.
And somebody second it. You guys have seen it. And
right. So I will make a motion that we accept our accountant's financial reports as he has delivered them to us in lieu of a treasurer's report.
I'll second.
Okay. Aye.
Okay. So Arthur, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Did I hear a vote for yes?
Yes.
Everybody? Okay, Josh. All right.
Okay.
Minutes
from the last session. I move that we approve the minutes from the last session.
Give me 1 minute.
Give you a minute?
Yes.
Give her a minute for the minute.
Well, if you want to read the minutes, I'm happy to deliver the manager's report.
Yeah, why don't you do the manager's report?
Okay, Mike gets to hear me talk about it. Because the first thing on my report is my community policing services. All continues smoothly. Advice has been sought for park car complaint during the snow and questions about the legality of parking with out-of-state plates, as I think I've been forwarding the stuff to you. I think the issue has been resolved today, as a matter of fact, because thanks to Mike's handiwork. No traffic complaints. Thornapple Street, I guess people have stopped driving on Thornapple Street. And special attention was being paid by Nick to Quincy Street based upon the concern that was voiced last council meeting by a resident over there on Quincy Street. And he said, Nick said he's only observed one car in the one instance parked across the driveway. But that he does not, across the sidewalk, I'm sorry. Yeah. He's not seen any kind of a rampant problem. As far as sanitation services, I'm very glad that the winter is over because it was definitely a challenge, no question about it. We did have, I think, almost 2 days where they couldn't get the they couldn't get the trucks going and get them out of the yard, and another where they didn't feel Waste Management gets to call the shots that it was safe enough to bring the trucks in.
And the dump was closed on a number of occasions.
That happens too. And we did have one of our guys fall trying to climb over snowy berms, but what are you going to do? I don't know. We can think about next winter about maybe trying to, do something different. But heavy trash pickup I was not happy with, but I managed to rescue it. I had to track down the guys and find the truck.
I saw you tracking the guy.
That's what it was. In the rain, drawing them a map of Martin's Additions to get the trash picked up. Poor guys. They're very nice, but they didn't know where they were going. So I've had some conversations with Waste Management about that. Wider Circle, we had again a great response from Wider Circle this time. We're putting more and more good furniture and furnishings and clothing and kitchenwares and linens and stuff into the homes of people that come to a wider circle and getting it out of the trash stream, and it's been very, very well received. As a matter of fact, Chevy Chase Village has asked to copy the model that we have put in place with a wider circle. Rolling Acres, I thought as far as snow plowing is concerned, I think Rolling Acres did a great job. Oh, you know what we didn't talk about? Sidewalk shoveling. Yikes! Oh man, we got to go back and talk about that.
Yeah,
Let me finish my report.
Okay, I have a volunteer who has volunteered to organize the kids into shoveling.
Well, but that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about putting in the budget. Snow shoveling of village sidewalks, and we completely, sorry about that. Okay, I'm sorry, I'll finish this. Snow plowing, they did I thought they did a fantastic job. Rolling Acres is just so responsible. Everything I wanted, like cleaning streets at the last minute, putting out those sand cans, refilling them, because as you know, our previous contractor had an emergency, and it became ill very suddenly, and we had to reach out and find somebody to help us out, and they did a great job. We will need an amendment to the budget, but I'm not. We have tomorrow perhaps to account for additional expenditures. WSSC water is fine, no sewer problems, no gas line issues, road repairs, yes, but Pepco, no issues. We continue to issue permits for the utilities as they come to us. They come to us routinely. We have to approve them, sign them, and get them back to them for the construction project. As far as the trees are concerned, we're wrapping up winter pruning as we speak almost. And now the time is to get into the spring work, and it will include the mulching of the new trees we put in the fall. Remulching and cleaning our butterfly garden. Bernice, did you hear that? Probably didn't hear me say that. Review of all the budding out of the trees for signs of additional pruning needs. He prunes during the winter, but then as the trees start to come out, he makes sure that they didn't miss a lot of any dead stuff. They'll do a complete spring assessment, including community-wide drive-through with the tree supervisor, Dan Gardner. And then we'll look for recommendations for any further assessments by the state forester. And in cases where we're unsure about a tree, we'll bring in Barbara Neal to make an assessment when we think a tree might have something in question. Then as the trees begin to bloom out, we will lift them from the streetlights as we always do, and then the watering bags go on in the hot weather. As far as street repairs and traffic issues, Joe Cutro, I'm going to ask to conduct a review of the condition of our street signs because we took a beating this winter. And we really haven't re-looked at them for a while. When Pepco moved the poles, a lot of the signs had to be moved, and because they're in different places, we ended up with some no parking signs, for example, not in great place. But now that the winter's over, we've got busted up signs on Raymond Street, we've got other stuff. I'm going to have Joe make an assessment of what needs to be done, and he will actually do the ordering for the new signs for us and actually do the repair. So
all the poles have been moved that are going to be moved now. We're done with that.
I believe we are done.
I think we're done with all that.
I believe we are done. So he will assess the need for additional or new signs, and then I will, of course, bring back to you a list of what that is and an estimate for the repair.
Would
Potholes.
you check into that sign on Raymond we got asked about?
Yeah, of course. Okay, of course. That was one of the cases where the pole was moved.
Okay.
And to do it individually becomes very expensive. You've got to move the brackets, so we're going to.
There might be two signs, because there's one sign that fell down.
Well, the engineer, the traffic engineer, we have a list of where everything is. So he's going to walk through and see where things are where there aren't things that should be there. I'm happy to. Yeah. So if you want, I'm happy to.
I brought up 2 meetings ago, and I'm not looking for anything immediate, but within 60 or 90 days.
Oh, no, but he's going to do it this spring. So spring is officially tomorrow, so he's got it on his agenda. It's definitely something that's immediate.
During the snowstorm, spring is going to break out.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, we got the sidewalk repairs. I'm sorry. I have been looking into finding additional companies that would do the same kind of work, that precision concrete cutting, and
are there any?
There are, at first I couldn't find many of them, but I did some more review, and it appears there are companies that do something similar. Whether they do it like Precision Concrete, I don't know yet, but certainly I think this contract, because even its minimum, it's over $10,000, and its maximum is at 21. I think we ought to put it out to bid. And additionally, the most important thing for you guys is to decide at what level do you want to do this safety. Do you want to go to repairing all hazards of up to $38,000? So my thought was on going out to bid. If you look at what's in my report, we have three options: either do the 3/8 of an inch, half an inch, and 3/4 of an inch.
Right.
And my recommendation, and I'm sure Legit would recommend the same thing, would be we go out to bid for, well, I guess we could go out to bid for all three of them, huh, Ron, and then make a decision, see who gives us what. But to use those standards of 3/8,
right.
1/2, and 3/4 to apply in the bid requirements, bid specifications.
My only question about that is, what if that excludes somebody because they don't have the exact same measurement? And what if they're a one whatever if off because their machine does?
Well, we'll deal with that again. I think these are standards that are probably industry-wide, and I think it would become apparent at the time we actually go out to bid. Streetlight update. I just got some information today. They seem to time it well from Pepco and from Scott Watson. The new device is supposed to arrive here in April, and Pepco's going to install it, take out the old one, rehang the one that's there. So, just
we'll
one month at a time.
Do the
is kind of way. Yeah, absolutely. Water issues on Oxford Street. You know about the meeting next Tuesday night over in Chevy Chase Village. It sounds very interesting, and they're bringing in some folks from the the Waterscape program at the University of Maryland. The 30th celebration was well received.
Yes.
I am considering going to the MML convention. I know that. Yeah, I haven't been there.
You have been a long time.
Well, the other managers are going, so I think maybe we'll join them. And Tiffany has already made arrangements to go.
Good.
Election committee work has been executed. There's a regional workshop for Legit on April 2nd that I will attend. We're doing some revision on the website, trying to make the building information more accessible, and actually Bill Lebovich has been assisting. Beth is very good at this, and we're redesigning some of the forms and moving them around and pulling pieces out. So I know you guys have looked at it once, but we're not there yet, but we're certainly happy to take a look at it and any recommendations for making it more easily resident, accessible, and understanding. We welcome it, of course. And we continue to explore the posting of recordings of meetings to the website. Our IT man has been exploring some upgrades in equipment. And then eventually I'll have to do a monthly emergency operations center drill to keep my certification. And don't forget to change the meeting on April the 23rd, and that's the end of my report.
I'm making that change right now. I
Okay,
got
good.
that.
For the posting of the meetings, can we, I don't know the technical side of it, would it be possible to start posting what we have, and then if concerns arise over, listenability or size, like that kind of stuff?
I'd have to ask our tech man.
It's possible. Quality is very substandard, but it is certainly feasible.
I mean, my thing would be, let's give it a go. I've pulled a couple for the meetings I missed, and maybe it's because I'm so used to hearing the voices. They work for me when I listen to them at home.
We can certainly do it if the council wants to.
Well, consider it. Let's consider it.
Well, let's have another. Let's have
I haven't heard any of them. I'll have to come by with my flash drive.
I asked you guys to just come in and sit down and plug it in and listen to it, and it's because I think there's a couple of things that we might be able to substantially improve. But just come on, as I said at the last.
And also, I haven't done it. You gave us websites and links to some other jurisdictions that are doing it.
Yeah, well, we
and I
can
was
definitely
intending to do that today.
Maybe we can make a day of it.
Yeah. Listen to council meetings from around the neighborhood.
Listen to them at home.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only other thing is whether or not you want to go back, because I completely forgot to discuss. We had talked at the work session about considering instituting a program to shovel sidewalks in the village. It's all the rage in all the towns. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I'm telling you this because I've had a number of requests.
Right.
Has the village ever considered shoveling sidewalks?
Yeah, we did.
We did.
We used to.
We shoveled the.
Not for everybody.
No. We just shoveled people that were, elderly people, and it was very expensive. But that was also there were a couple bad winters. I think one of the things that's being seen in the towns that are doing it, town of Chevy Chase is probably the biggest in terms of a massive volume. Mulherron is doing it. They've got about 15 miles of sidewalks. I calculate, and it costs them about $10,000 per mile of sidewalk. So their budget, they're expecting expenditures this winter to be about $150,000. This is based on this particular winter, the kind of ice, the kind of shoveling, and all this kind of stuff. So I've been working to sort of find some benchmarks about, well, if we want to explore this, and it's your guys' call to say, Gene, don't bother to spend any more time. I explored it a little bit. I found what the neighboring towns is. I calculated that we have about 2.69 miles of sidewalk, because not all our streets have sidewalks, but I have the highway user reports that give that out to us. I also have numbers related to what we spent on Brookville Road, and actually the assistant manager was supposed to get on her bike and measure the length of the Brookville Road, but I guess we're going to have to ask the chairman.
Well,
you
from
think?
here, from where to where?
From here to Quincy Street?
No, it's more. That's more.
You think so?
Yeah.
More than half a mile?
Yeah.
Anyway, I have the numbers for what it cost us to shovel that. Okay, and the number of shoveling events. So there is some data that's out there. There's a lot of complexities and a lot of variables that come into it. The kind of snow, the kind of sidewalk. Brookville is particularly problematic because of the state plows, and they're constantly replowing. Alan, thank you. Constantly replowing the sidewalk in, but it's critical.
Right.
Some of our little residential sidewalks maybe wouldn't be as bad. When I compare what we used to spend with what we might spend, I wonder if the guys coming to the start of the sidewalk, heads down, and shoveling from there to the end of the street, in fact, would be less than what we had paid, where they had to go to a house, shovel that person's walk, pack up all their equipment, go to the other person's, depending on where the older folks live.
Did they do just the right-of-way sidewalk, or did they do up to people's homes?
No, they just did the sidewalks.
No, not up to the homes, yeah.
And I think there's some administrative burden associated with it. I talked extensively with Town Chef Chase about it. But I do think, because really several residents have asked me, as well as the Chevy Chase at Home said, what kind of does Martin's Additions have anything? Now they have a Storm Buddy program that they support, the Chevy Chase at Home, where the elderly folks team up with neighbors. So there's always, of course there's other opportunities, but at $10,000 a mile, obviously it would be about $27,000 in our budget. So it's, whether we could, if we're going to do a work session about some other budget items, I could continue to explore this. I don't know how would you like to direct me?
I personally have a view that people should be responsible, except for those who are physically unable.
But they still, here's the deal in town of Chevy Chase, they still remain a couple things. Town doesn't shovel until there's 3 inches of snow. Okay? They said it's a little bit of a wink, nod. Right. Okay? But, and that residents remain responsible for salting and maintaining the work that's actually been done. So it's not that you're letting somebody completely off the hook, but I tell you, there's also been an awful lot of complaints about unshoveled, icy, dangerous sidewalks, especially walking to the market, kids walking to buses. I think it's so important. So it's a trade-off between, do we want to do a year of enforcement and getting out there and writing people tickets, and Wayne can write tickets, or do we want to do a more intensive campaign? Is there some combination?
Volunteers.
What was your
round
resident?
Up kids.
You said a resident?
Yeah, a resident has offered to organize volunteers to do it.
Well, a lot of kids did do it, and I don't know how many kids want to do it and not do it for money, because that's what motivates the kids.
Yeah.
What's the problem with that? They're not within our control as a town. They, they can or cannot show up. And why does the town have to do that? Well, you would, or volunteer would do it. That's fine. Go ahead.
I prefer to have the full council discuss this. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I don't have an opinion.
Good.
I have I have reservations about it, and I need to work through them.
Well, and if you want me to, I can certainly do more research and see what some of the other towns are doing and explore.
Yeah, let's bring it up at the next meeting again.
Sure. Well, if we want to put it in the budget.
Okay.
If we want to, we need to contemplate. So if you guys want to contemplate it, I will continue to explore. If you don't want any contemplation, if you say, no, I'm done.
Let's contemplate.
Okay, so you want more information.
This one could be a pretty good experiment for the dual bid policy. Because I could probably pay me $5,000 and I'll deliver it.
Okay.
I'll pay $73,000.
Okay, I think it's time to open up for residents again. In the back.
I got about 150 feet of frontage on Brookville, and I will tell you that we've got all kinds of problems there. I would personally recommend one of those snow blower things that eats up the snow and stuff, because when these plows are coming through, you're getting big chips of ice. I mean, I'm perfectly capable to dig my area out. But when it is ice and I'm chipping with a snow shovel, are you kidding me?
Oh, it's
for
terrible.
150 feet?
Right.
I mean, I'd like to get to work next week.
Yeah.
So, it is ridiculous. It's beyond what you can do as an able-bodied person to handle that. We need to get some machinery that deals with it. And I noticed in Chevy Chase Section 3 that they got guys that are doing, you know what they're doing? They're just blowing it right back into the street, which is actually fine because it gets so diversified by the car tires. So that's about a $300 piece of equipment that you can take and just go and just crush all that stuff in the street. Now, I mean, if I got to go buy that myself and you're going to tell me that you're going to ticket me for doing all that, fine. I already scrape off the street for 3 of my neighbors because they're elderly and I just help them out with that. But, I would say that create a tremendous amount of ill will if I got a ticket when I've got to dig through what comes up from those plows.
Well, Brookville, we take care. We do shovel. No, the problem is we shovel it and then the plows come through again and does it. And they go through again.
It gets taken care of.
I think you guys do a great
$3,500
job.
worth.
I'm just saying, if we're contemplating solutions, can we throw some equipment into that solution and get some guys with those, what do you call them, the little snowblower things that,
Yeah, but as you say, when there's ice.
Street.
like Ed Ross up an industrial one. But
Yeah, but with ice, you need more than the blower. You need
Use a contractor to do it, and you let the contractor
Well, a few years ago,
decide.
they did use Bobcats. I live along Brookville Road also, and they did come with Bobcats several years ago when we had, Snowmageddon or whatever.
Yeah.
They were out there in the middle of the night with it, and I personally think they did a great job this year. They seem to be very prompt.
Other comments?
And just one other thing on the plows, we have fragile, azalea bushes. Those plows in recent years are blowing up the salt, which kills the azalea bushes and all that stuff, which I'm sure we can't control, so we'll just re-landscape. But, the point is that there's a lot of collateral damage going on there.
Yeah.
So there's more than just this idea of, hey, get out there and, scrape your Brookville frontage.
Well, Brookville we do on a regular basis.
I'm just saying when you rely on enforcement of the neighbors there, that is a sizable task.
Right.
That's not.
Yeah.
The problem, of course, is Brookville Road is a state highway, and I know you've seen those trucks. I've never seen such big trucks in my life as the trucks that plow Brookville Road. And we get our own. He sits out here with his engine running and just has the ball up and down the street. But that's especially why we always, that I can remember, have shoveled Brookville Road, the sidewalk, because the state's constantly redumping the ice and sand on it. So,
Okay. Wait a minute, Steve. I thought I saw some hands in the back. No? Okay, Steve.
I noticed that one item on the agenda appeared, unless I fell asleep, to be missed, and that is the block party policy.
Oh, that was my mistake.
Yeah, that was, we skipped by it. We've already done that. Been there, done that.
Okay.
We did it last month, and I put it on there erroneously this month. My apologies for the confusion.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I had two questions about contracting that are basically for Mr. Bolt, and one of the items I think Jean touched on. You mentioned that the sole source contract, I think you said that that's required by vote of the council. Is that right? Did I hear you right?
Yes, I believe so. Let me pull out the charter. I believe it says. Let's see. No, sole source does not require a finding by the council. There is a unique exception in the charter that provides bidding may be dispensed with based on prior lack of response to advertisement. And that does require a finding by the council. If the council finds in a public meeting that competition is impractical because a prior lack of response to advertisement, bidding may be dispensed with. But no finding is required by the council for sole source. However, it's a finding that's implied because the charter provides the council has the authority to contract. And so if the council's relying on that exception, then the council is making that finding.
So it ultimately is by authority of the council. Okay. And the other question that, and I think Jean mentioned, is I just was curious as to whether the $10,000 limit is consistent with other jurisdictions. That was the limit for the personal and professional services contracts.
No,
That limit doesn't apply to them.
That doesn't apply to the personal and professional services.
Yeah, that applies to any contract.
Any contract, but is that consistent with, say, Chevy Chase Village?
In some towns, yes, in some towns, no. Kensington, I think it's $25,000. In some towns, there's no limit at all. And actually, the council has said, I mean, I don't want to speak where I don't have the data in front of me. That would be, I would pull this information together so that we have all those answers and documented it the next time we do a work session or however we choose to proceed.
And I have one final comment on the snow issue, snow removal thing. You said you're going to check into that. One thing that would be of concern to me, if you were to go with one of these volunteer things with the kids doing it or whoever, that would raise some liability issues, I would think. Let's say.
Not if we're not doing it. If we're not doing it. If that's just a volunteer that somebody decides to do, if we're not involved, I don't think we would have liability issues. Of course, we would check with our attorney and with our insurer, but I don't imagine there would be.
If we do it, the liability is an issue.
If we hire volunteers?
No.
It's all there. Well, actually, the liability rests with the company. But anyway, our attorney protect us.
To the extent that it's practical, could the council supply the community with some idea of how much has been put out for bid and some idea of what it was that was put out for bid? How much is personal services, what we're spending on? So we could see in one place all of this contract discussion that would be helpful?
Isn't that what Tiffany proposed?
Yeah. I think about one of the few things that we do put out for contract is the trash pickup.
Right.
It's big.
The big, yeah.
The big ones, yeah.
But Arthur, I think what she's asking for is kind of what was asked for about last year, a list of the contracts. Where do they fall into the universe of how we have to treat them? I think that, in the next discussion, if we do a work session, which I, again, think we should do, have that discussion. We also need to make sure that we're not providing any information about contracts that we don't need to have for public consumption for future bids.
Usually, they are discussed at the council meetings, and there's not a lot, I can tell you in the last 2 or 3 years, there have not been a lot of them.
A lot of
Because, we will sign a 3-year contract, and then there's renewals and so on, so it doesn't come up a lot, but it's out there. Yeah.
I'm more interested, I guess, in what doesn't go out for bid.
Everything else.
Everything else, right. But I think realistically, one can narrow that down. I mean, we're not talking about who sweeps and who does that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think by very, very, very rough estimation, if there are 30 contracts in place right now, only 3 or 4 of them are over 10,000.
Right.
Personal and professional included in
Well,
that?
you know what? We're going to get the data and make sure that we got it right, okay? But you think about trash,
Paving.
and
Really?
anything like we do paving, and we always go out to bid on that because we don't have a in-house, or we piggyback on a state contract. But among those 30, there's things like the contract on the copier. That there's the people that clean this office.
What
twice a
about the
month,
ones that we've had to get bids? Ken, there's not a lot.
Well, when we did a Morton
Streets.
Thomas, when we do streets, when we do trash, and as a matter of fact, the trash contract is coming up for bid again. We'll pull all this stuff together, but there's big dollars associated with it, and those records are all available.
The time the piggyback thing comes up once in a while, we'll get a call from a contractor. My crews are out there, the trucks are there. We're just across the street. We can come in and do your road, your sidewalk, or whatever. And we've relied on that.
And we've worked with some of the utilities.
And we get a deal on that. So, well, Steve.
I think, and I accept the fact there's going to be work study to gather all the data. But there can't be that many contracts. If there's 30 and a handful of them are for maintenance of copiers and whatnot, and some of them are big ticket items, that might leave 15 or so that are the ones I think that most people are focused on, that most people came to this meeting because it was on the agenda. And I wonder if we can frame the discussion, not so much the dollars of those, but the discussion, because there are a lot of people who, if you have a lot of contracts that are personal or professional contracts, they're really de facto employees, but they don't have there's no sort of oversight or review or performance evaluation of those employees, effective contractors. And I think if we can frame the nature of how those things are awarded, that would be more important, I think, than the actual dollar amounts that we're talking about. And I think this might just apply to the next meeting. I think if we could do that, my guess, that most people in this room who are interested in the contract discussion are interested in that part of it.
Well, there is an evaluation. We go back to the people. We don't have to go back to the people who are providing the services. And I can think of 1 or 2 occasions in the past where we have not gone back to people because they were not providing the services as well as others could. Others did it cheaper and better.
There's so much that goes on in this office, and so much that goes on with the people we use to provide us with the oversight and review. I'm not going to go out there and do the oversight and review, but we do have experts that we contract to do it. So we'll make sure that we make that very clear who's doing the oversight and review.
Of the village. And
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Some of the people who are quasi-employees of the village, people who are on personal service contracts for the village, what is the process? Like, there doesn't appear to be a lot of transparency around what the process is that does go into the performance evaluations.
They're not crazy employees. We have a lighting engineer who does the evaluation of the lighting. And I don't see, we don't evaluate them as we would an employee. And we buy their services, and to the degree that they're performing it.
And we've been talking about hypotheticals, we've been talking about emergency snow crews and things, and I'm very happy with the way that the snow plan went, which Rolling Acres, who I think are great. They're not the low bid, by the way, but that's okay. They do great.
They're not what? I'm sorry.
Low bid.
They're not the low bid.
Oh.
I use my landscaping. They're not the low bid, but they're very good. And that's okay. But because there's a limited number of contracts, why don't we go through each one of them?
Well, let me jump in here and ask Ron, our attorney, a question. There's no privacy interest for a contractor that I'm aware of if they contract with a municipality and someone files an information request for how much that contract was for or the expenditure. I mean...
Yeah, the contracts are public records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's public record, and this is something we discussed at the last public meeting, is this is an issue that I've heard over and over again, and we need to sort of get to it, and I'm not concerned about it. I'm confident the expenditures are reasonable, but it's an issue that people wonder about.
But this is why we kicked this off tonight, and this is why we're at step one, and
in fact,
ready to move forward.
the question you're asking...
I'm struck by the fact we didn't do this research ahead of time.
Well,
I'm struck by the fact we don't know the data, we don't have the data.
Well, it's not data, it's the ongoing operation. So I'll tell you, about a year ago, the council members were asking exactly your question. We sat down and went through them one by one. Who does what do they get paid, and so on, just as an educational issue. So, you know, many people were in the same boat. But it's not, you know, we actually did come up with a list at that time. It was kind of not random, informal.
We did
it wasn't
a list of who does what.
Right.
We didn't get into
it was an informal
details
list
of contracts and that stuff.
But there's lots of information available, and we'll just continue to dig.
Yeah, so this subject is now on the agenda. This is why I put it here today, to kick it off and to start and get discussion and comments going. Thank you.
Can I suggest that since this seems to come up every so often, every year at least, maybe to start a more repeatable process on this, right? So it's accessible to village residents. If they wonder, they can go somewhere and actually get that information regularly. And if the contracts change, the changes will be posted.
That's an interesting comment. Thank you. Okay. Good. Anything else? Anything else you want to bring up?
No. How about you?
Ron's fading.
I think not. No. Do you want to bring up anything? Yes, there is one additional item to bring up. It has to do with the Elections Committee. Excuse me, Ted. There was an action taken by the Elections Committee today that, how should I put it, I thought was not well done. And let me go through and describe what it was. And I would actually like to ask our attorney his advice, and our other attorney sitting here. It had to do with scheduling an executive session for tonight to discuss the manager's contract. And as you can see, there are only 3 people here tonight. And so we're going to have an abbreviated session tonight and another one in a week or so. And one council member objected to this, saying that we should not proceed with only 3 members and send it to the Election and Ethics Committee for their consideration. And they recommended, based on a number of points, that we postpone the executive session, which we have done. But I thought that there were some issues raised in this that required a little bit greater discussion. One of the issues is whether this is in the remit of the Elections Committee, the Elections and Ethics Committee, as described in the charter and then as specified in the ordinances. The Ethics Committee looks into conflicts of interest mainly. Not mainly, it's elections and conflicts of interest, not other issues. And then there were other issues raised that I thought just required a bit of discussion. One was whether, let me just look at my notes here. One was whether a perceived attitude or thoughts of a council member should be considered as requiring them to recuse themselves from considering an issue. Another was whether more people were necessary, whether more than the legal required quorum was necessary to consider this. And my thoughts on this is that a quorum is a quorum, as defined in the ordinances and in the charter. A quorum is 3 people out of the council, and that more people are not necessarily needed to consider any particular issue. A second question is whether, if somebody has views, attitudes, preferences, proclivities, or something on an issue, whether that should prohibit them from discussing it and considering an issue. I think in both cases that a quorum is a quorum. We don't need special numbers of people to consider any particular issue. The second is that attitudes are yours to have, and people run on agendas. It's perfectly legitimate to have points of view, and that if you have a particular point of view, it should not be something that prohibits you from acting on those point of view in a discussion or in a council meeting. And I'm not sure if there's a legal issue here. I think there's actually another issue comes up. And we may have been in violation of our ordinance for some time. According to the ordinances, the election committee should have 3 members appointed by the council. And it's not at least 3 or 3 or more. It just says 3. I was kind of surprised that I thought it was 3 or more, but it's not. And it's the 3 members appointed by the committee. And so that raises an issue as well in the current constitution of the committee. So I have a number of considerations here and concerns. One is that the election and ethics committee acted beyond the remit, and 2, that they raised 2 points that I thought were inappropriate points to be raised.
I'm not sure I understand that for the minutes, but E&E went beyond their what?
Remit, beyond their, what's a good word? Authority.
Jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction.
Okay, and then what were the comments?
And the comments were that, one was that more than a simple quorum should be required to discuss this. The second was that if a person was alleged to have certain views on a subject, that they should recuse themselves because of those views.
Certain views. I'll write it.
So if somebody came in and said they're campaigning against the property tax, they have to reduce the property tax, perhaps they shouldn't be allowed to vote on a property tax discussion in the council, as an example of that. And I thought that both of those contentions were
Does it get down
inappropriate.
to partiality or prejudice, what you're speaking of?
Well, yeah, partiality and prejudice are perfectly acceptable.
Well, no, you took an oath that you swore
Yeah.
that you wouldn't conduct business with prejudice or partiality.
I'm not sure what the oath was that we took. We thought we were upholding the laws.
Those were not part of the...
We were uphold the laws of the state of Maryland, the United States, and the county.
Well, but why wouldn't the standards that apply for recusal of any elected official in the county or the state apply?
I don't know what those are.
Well,
There is not. It doesn't involve conflict of interest or monitoring. Could I? Do you have anything you want to add?
Well, yeah, these are some complicated issues, and I saw
some research?
I saw the email traffic today, but I haven't had an opportunity to commit a lot of time to it.
Well, I think it does depend on what issue it is you're addressing, because some could be more relevant than others. So that may be just out of I don't know whether respect isn't the word I want, but because it might be a better way to deal with it, to have a full...
Yeah, this is a matter of practicality, fairness, and so on. I agree. But yeah. A member of the committee. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I think it might be helpful if we actually looked at the language that the Elections and Ethics Committee availed itself of in addressing the referral to it by one of your colleagues who could not be here today. the committee is unable to find any language in the VMA charter that specifically defines any standards of legal and ethical behavior for council members. The committee is unable to find any mention in the charter of standards of ethical behavior by council members or residents that could provide guidance for its handling of Mr. Lebovich's referral and complaint.
And before we go any further, may I suggest that because this originates out of a proposed executive session on a personnel matter, that this discussion may be more appropriate for an executive session, and to the extent that it may or may not involve personnel.
Okay. I don't think this discussion involves personnel.
Well, I'm afraid the rest of the email, though, does.
Yeah, the ethics committee may not have had the opportunity for your guidance on the executive session and what they can and cannot say.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Wait, say that again?
The ethics committee is present.
It may be appropriate for the council and the ethics commission to meet in closed session.
Okay, good idea, okay.
That's a good idea.
Right, okay. I will accept your advice.
But having said that,
right.
I will say publicly that I firmly support Art. I believe what he did was completely correct, and I'm hoping the ethics committee will rescind this email because it was inappropriate and based on failure to interview Art before sending the email, which I don't understand why you would do that. That just, this man has guided the council as chair with 4 rookies and done an extraordinary job. And the email you sent, I found extremely offensive. I guess I have to stop there. I will take it over.
We will do an executive session. I found it less offensive. So,
keep it good about stuff like that.
Mr. Chairman, you have, and I think that the minutes will reflect, framed the question, the issue in a quite different way than the Elections and Ethics Committee handled it. And I do not wish to have this meeting adjourned without it being made absolutely clear what it is we did say and what it is we either directed you to do or suggested you to think about you do. And I would like to say very, very strongly that we didn't direct you to do a damn thing. Neither did we claim to have that power, but we did feel that we had the right, the opportunity, and the obligation to respond to a referral that was made to it by a duly elected council member like the rest of you around this table now. Now, if you want to discuss this in an executive session, that's fine. But what I want to get into the record is what we actually said.
Okay.
Council, would you weigh in on this before he goes further? I don't know to what extent that he speaks on behalf of himself as a resident or as
as a member of the election committee.
But as a member of the election committee, I'm not sure.
The confidentiality that I'm concerned about belongs to the employee, and it may be that this discussion won't really involve anything confidential about the employee, but it's a very fine line that we're approaching.
Arthur's at the email.
Maybe could we just adjourn for 5 minutes and allow me to talk with one or more employees?
Sure.
About whether or not they agree to this discussion being held in the open.
No, I was going to say give it to Ron, so he knew what.
You have it. You have it there.
You want to see what Frank's got.
That's it.
Well, Frank
that's
has. He has it here.
Is that the same letter that Frank's got?
But there's only one email that
I'm going to run to the restroom.
So we'll adjourn for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
even